Imagine a battlefield in Asia Minor, where two great armies faced each other, Lydia and Media. Swords were drawn, war cries thundered, yet suddenly the sky changed. The bright sun darkened. A total eclipse. Even the bravest warriors trembled. To them, it was the wrath of the gods. Behind this event stood Thales, a philosopher from Miletus. Long before the war broke out, he had already warned, on this day, the sun will vanish from the sky. To many, such a prophecy was impossible. But on that very day, Thales' prediction came true. Both armies froze, fear blanketing the battlefield. For kings, this was no mere natural event. They realized there was a man who could read the secrets of the heavens. He was no priest, no mystic prophet, but a logical thinker. Thales had proven that knowledge could stop swords. From that moment, his name echoed not only in the port city of Miletus, but also in royal courts. That eclipse was not only an astronomical phenomenon, it was a turning point in history. When the mind of a single man could change the course of a war, in the bustling port of Miletus, ships from many lands docked. Merchants shouted, selling cloth, spices, and gold. But Thales was not fixated on trade. He looked upward at the stars that emerged when night fell. The Phoenicians had long used stars to sail. They crossed the wide seas as far as Spain, but to the Greeks, the ocean was still full of mystery. Thales studied constellations, especially the pole star, which always pointed north. From this, he began teaching how to navigate with the sky. What did this have to do with royal diplomacy? Simple. Whoever controlled the sea controlled trade, and whoever controlled trade controlled power. By bringing navigational knowledge into royal courts, Thales gave the kings of Lydia and the rulers of Ionia a new tool to expand influence. For kings, this was more valuable than thousands of soldiers. With ships able to sail farther and more safely, power could grow. Thales had turned stars into weapons, not swords, but sharper ones, weapons of strategy. Knowledge was not only for philosophers, it could become the key to power. And Thales was the first to show that path. For ancient Egypt, the Nile was both blessing and threat. Each year it overflowed, bringing fertile soil but also capable of destroying villages. Priests claimed the floods were the will of gods, unpredictable. But when Thales visited Egypt, he saw differently. He observed the seasons, the winds, and the stars rising before dawn. From all this, he concluded, the Nile's floods were no mystery, but a natural cycle that could be understood. When he spoke to Egyptians, some laughed. How could a foreigner know more than us, guardians of the sacred river? Yet others were astonished, for Thales' explanation gave hope. If the cycles could be measured, then people could prepare. The news reached the palace. For officials, the ability to foresee floods meant power. With such knowledge, the kingdom could manage harvests, regulate taxes, and strengthen the claim that the king controlled nature itself. Thales was no longer just a foreign philosopher. He became a key to royal stability. What seemed simple to Thales became a priceless political tool for rulers. Here was the point where philosophy and kingship met. The logic of a foreigner began to change how Egypt saw its sacred river. Before the towering pyramids, kings and priests saw only symbols of eternity. None knew their exact height. Until one day, Thales boldly declared, "I can measure it without climbing." He planted a staff in the ground and waited until its shadow equaled its length. At that very moment, he measured the pyramid's shadow. With the simple logic of similar triangles, Thales found the answer. The priests were stunned. They had believed only the gods knew the secrets of the pyramids. The king, who had first dismissed him, now looked at Thales with respect. To him, this foreign knowledge could enhance the prestige of Egypt, showing that Egypt was not only a center of power, but also of wisdom. Yet tension rose. The priests feared that if people knew, divine secrets could be explained. With lines and shadows, their authority would crumble. Thales did not care. To him, truth was not meant to be hidden but shared. That day at the foot of the pyramids, a great clash took place between the symbols of ancient power and the simple logic of a foreigner. Strangely, it was logic that made the king silent longer than the priest's prayers ever had. When word of Thales' brilliance reached Lydia, King Alyattes grew curious. In his palace filled with gold and soldiers, he summoned Thales. The grand hall was packed with priests, nobles, and royal advisors. With regal authority, the king asked, "Is it true you can read the will of the heavens better than my priests?" Thales gazed calmly. He did not speak of gods, but of natural patterns. "I only read what is already written in the stars," he answered. The words sounded simple, but to the king and priests it was a challenge. The priests mocked him, calling him arrogant. But the king wanted more than words. He challenged Thales to prove it. If you are right, show me something that will happen. Predict what has not yet been seen. It was not merely a test of knowledge, but a wager of life. If Thales failed, he might lose honor, even his life. But if he succeeded, he would reveal something that could reshape royal power over the people. That day, Lydia's court became the stage of two worlds. Knowledge born of observation versus authority born of the throne. In the following years, Lydia and Media prepared for war. Two great armies faced each other, bows drawn, swords gleaming under the midday sun. Thales, traveling with them, had already warned, "Today, the sun will vanish from the sky." At first, everyone thought him mad. How could a man predict the wrath of gods? But as the first swords were raised, the light dimmed. The once bright sky grew dark. The sun was swallowed by the shadow of the moon. Armies froze, arrows fell, war drums went silent. Both sides panicked, crying that the gods were enraged. Yet Thales stood calmly looking skyward. He knew this was no wrath but the geometry of the heavens. The event shook both kingdoms. For Lydia's king, Thales' prophecy was not only proof of knowledge but also a tool of diplomacy. A war that could have claimed thousands of lives was halted. A peace treaty was signed. The eclipse proved that knowledge could be stronger than swords. In an instant, Thales was no longer just a foreign philosopher, but the man who decided the fate of kingdoms. Back in Miletus, people often mocked Thales. "What use is your philosophy if you remain poor?" They laughed as if knowledge were nothing but idle dreams. Thales did not grow angry. He merely smiled. By observing the stars and seasons, he knew the olive harvest next year would be abundant. Quietly, he rented all the olive presses in town. When harvest came, his prediction was right. Olives overflowed, and everyone rushed to use the presses. Thales controlled them all. Overnight, he became the richest man in town. Yet afterward, he gave away his profits and returned to a simple life. He wished to prove only one thing: philosophy was not useless. If he wanted, he could be wealthy. But the true purpose of knowledge was not gold, but understanding. For kings who heard the tale, Thales was not just a thinker, but someone who knew how to turn knowledge into economic strategy. Once again, he showed that knowledge could reshape power. Among all of Thales' ideas, one was the boldest. He claimed that everything came from water. To people of that age, it sounded absurd. The world was explained through gods, not through a simple element. But Thales observed that without water, life did not exist. Water could become vapor, turn to ice, flow in rivers and fill the seas. It was in the bodies of humans, animals, and plants. Water was the thread connecting all things. With this simple idea, Thales opened a new path. For the first time, someone tried to explain the origin of the world without myth. Kings and priests may not have fully agreed, but the idea spread, igniting debate. For rulers, Thales' idea was both dangerous and useful. Dangerous because it challenged priestly authority, but useful because it offered a new basis for understanding nature. That idea became the foundation that later gave birth to philosophy, science, even modern cosmology. Thales never wrote books, but his ideas lived on through his students. Anaximander spoke of the infinite, Anaximenes declared air as the origin, and the philosophy of Miletus spread across Greece. From there, the fire of knowledge spread to Pythagoras, Heraclitus, and Socrates. All, directly or indirectly, stood on the foundation laid by Thales. For great kingdoms, this marked the beginning of change. If once only kings and priests were seen as sources of truth, now philosophy gave ordinary human reason the right to ask. This altered the relationship between people, rulers, and the world. Thales' legacy was not just theories, but the courage to think differently. That is why his name continued to echo, even centuries after his death. When history looks back, Thales' role becomes clear. He was not only a trader, not only a philosopher, but also a man who could change the destiny of kingdoms. From Egypt to Lydia, from Miletus' marketplace to battlefields, he showed that knowledge could rival swords, gold, even priests' prayers. Kings may have used him as a tool, but they also feared his bold thinking. For once the people knew nature could be understood, power built on myth began to crumble. The torch he lit never went out. From predicting eclipses to his philosophy of water, from economic strategy to inspiring students, Thales left a mark stronger than any palace wall. He was living proof that a thinker could alter the course of kingdoms, even without a crown upon his head.